What's your best met the high school bully as an adult story? Story 1. My dentist told me a story about his bully. Just after he opened his practice, he made an emergency appointment because of a cracked tooth. The dentist recognized him, but the bully didn't. Bully got in the chair. Dentist said, "Open wide," and started examining him. Then he said, "You don't recognize me, do you?" Bully said, "Nope," the best he could with the dentist's tools in his mouth. "You used to bully me at school. You made my life a total hell." Perfect timing. The bully apologized, and the dentist repaired his tooth. But imagine how he felt for those few seconds, being absolutely powerless. Reply 1. You made my life a total hell. Story 2. This one is a classic. This girl used to torment me all through high school and middle school. Really went out of her way to tear me down. Whenever we had a class together, she would make her extreme dislike for me apparent. And of course, other kids followed. I couldn't open my mouth without some kind of ridicule. Of course, I was miserable, and my dad would try to cheer me up by saying, "Don't worry, kiddo. One day she'll be working at a McDonald's and serving you fries." He actually referred to her as McDonald's girl for years. A couple of years after graduating high school, I went to a Hardee's with my dad, and there was McDonald's girl right behind the counter. So I go up to place my order, and before I finish, she says, "You don't remember me, do you?" "Oh, I remember you. So can I get fries with that?" She looked at me so angrily, ready to punch me right in the face, and replied, "Yes, you can, with or without ketchup." Way to go, Dad. He called it 9 years in advance. Well, it's great to see the tables turn on someone who used to bully and torment you, and to have your dad's prediction come true. The way the McDonald's girl reacted is also pretty amusing, especially after realizing who you were. It's a reminder that karma can come back to bite you, and it's always best to treat others with kindness and respect. Kudos to you for handling the situation with grace and humor. Story 3. The 2 to 3 most athletic kids had gained weight and gotten some chick pregnant. I think one was still with the mother, who had gained even more weight, and one paid child support. The hot girl that every guy wanted to bang had gotten married and had 3 kids, was still smoking hot, but had gotten super religious to the point that it was creepy. Reply 1. Haven't gone to any high school reunions. I actually didn't have that many enemies in high school, but middle school. Ooh, that's a whole different story. A bunch of the popular middle school girls who were awful to me got really fat. Some of them had oops babies and are constantly having baby daddy drama. I guess karma hit them really hard without them seeing it coming. Story 4. My then fiance took me out to dinner in my hometown, where we had our first date to celebrate my new promotion. I recognized our waitress right away as the girl who had been mean to me in 6th and 7th grade, the only years we had classes together. She didn't seem to recognize me. I had gained a lot of weight, and the restaurant was dark, so I let it go and treated her like any other waitress. When the bill came, I asked my now husband how we should tip. She was a great waitress and deserved a generous tip like we usually do, but the urge to stiff her was there as payback. I decided to tip her generously and let the pass go, but I did leave a note next to the tip. Here's to believing that people do grow up after high school, and I signed it class of 2015. The next day I got on Facebook and she had sent me a message. She said she had recognized me, but I looked happy, so she said nothing, and she treated me like any other customer. Then she apologized for anything she might have done to me in school. It was a hard time for her, and she didn't like to think about who she was then. Some bullies do grow up, and I'm glad we both did the right thing. Well, this is such a heartwarming story of forgiveness and growth, and it takes a lot of strength and maturity to be able to let go of past grievances and treat someone who hurt you with kindness and generosity. It's amazing to see how the protagonist's simple act of leaving a kind note with a generous tip could have such a positive impact on their former bully. The fact that the bully apologized for her past actions showed that people can change and that we should never give up on the possibility of redemption. This story is a great reminder that sometimes the best way to move forward is to forgive and let go of the past. Story 5. When I was a kid, I was fat. I used to get picked on all the time by this kid at church named Rusty. He was about 5 years older than me, and every couple of weeks he would beat me up. I moved away when I was about 14, and thankfully I didn't have to deal with him anymore. When I went to college, I decided to get my act together and get healthy. To that end, I started taking mixed martial arts. I did it for about 2 years and lost about 40 pounds. When I graduated, I moved back to where I was from and started looking for a new MMA gym. I went to the most reputable one, and who should be there but Rusty? It sounds too good to be true, but I swear to God, it happened. He hadn't changed a bit. The first thing he said to me was, "Finally trying to learn to defend yourself, huh?" I had called ahead, and the instructor knew my deal and had arranged for me to come watch. I left my gear in the car. At the end of class, they do free rolling, jiu-jitsu sparring. Rusty comes up to me, having no knowledge that I am the least bit experienced, and starts begging the instructor to let him spar me so he can show me the ropes. After all, he's been in MMA for 3 months now, and he never misses a UFC pay-per-view. I went outside and changed. So, long story short, we sparred, and I choked him out 3 times. Afterwards, I signed up for classes, he grabbed his bag, left, and never came back. This is my favorite story out of everything that has happened in my life thus far. I'm the only person I know that got to beat my childhood bully as an adult. Story 6. He called me a spotty dog. I had acne in front of a group of our classmates who all thought it was hilarious. He had a motorcycle accident in his early 20s and shredded the right side of his face. Lots of scarring, apparently. I heard about it secondhand. He didn't deserve it, but it did seem like karma stepped in, or the threefold law or whatever. Story 7. I own my own gym and have for a few years now. I received a message one day from a familiar-looking name on the business's Facebook page from a woman asking to come try us out. We set it up. She comes in for an introduction. She's very, very large and out-of-shape woman at this point. After about 5 minutes of working with her, it hits me that this lady used to be about half her current size and was an absolute bitch in her heyday. I decided not to bring it up to her as she appeared to be struggling in life and came to us in a time of need. And I took it, as I do with all of my clients, as a cry for help. Not to mention, I'm a grown man now, and that seemed pretty silly and insignificant in life today. Months later, during one of the classes, I noticed her struggling real hard, so I go over to offer some encouragement. As I lean down to say something to her, I notice she's crying faintly to herself. She looks up at me and quietly says, "Sorry for how nasty I was to you years ago, and thank you for doing this for me." Turns out an old mutual friend told her about my place, and she recognized me as the owner and came to me on purpose. No, not a story of revenge or retribution, but she reached out to someone she was terrible to, and today she's repurposed, and I find it to be quite inspiring. This story serves as a powerful reminder that people can change, and that we never know what someone else is going through. The gym owner could have easily dismissed the woman's request to try out the gym based on their past interactions, but he chose to help her instead. His act of kindness and compassion led to a powerful moment of healing and reconciliation for both of them. Story 8. I was playing poker in Atlantic City about 7 years ago, and one of the guys that bullied me, Chad, sat at my table. There's no way he recognized me. I was actually playing on a no-limit poker table while waiting for a friend of mine to come back from the toilet. Anyway, I stayed at the no-limit poker table just to take his money. I played probably 95% of the pots he was in. He was pretty drunk and wasn't very good. I got close to $600 off him in a little over an hour before he decided to quit. I have no idea what he does for a living, but I am 100% sure he is a big loser when he plays cards. Story 9. I had a teacher in grade 12 for modern Western history. The class was incredibly boring as a result of her teaching style, and I didn't pay much attention during the year. I was sporting a solid D in the class, and Mrs. Allison would make reference to me being a dullard constantly. On many occasions over the year, people would laugh at me as a result of a comment she made. At the time, I didn't think she was trying to be vindictive, just trying to jeer me into doing better in the class. Nonetheless, I'm sure it did have some impact on my self-esteem. Fast forward 8 years, I am running a college pro painting franchise, standing in a customer's driveway, getting supplies out of the back of my wicked awesome Chevy Lumina minivan. Mrs. Allison walks by, recognizes me, and says, "Oh, I'm so glad you got a job. You know, I could have told you were going into a manual labor trade. You were never really focused." In as flat a tone as I could, I got to tell her that not only am I running this franchise that employed 12 people that summer, but that I'm doing it while still a full-time student getting my BCom degree. The best satisfaction I have ever had because it didn't have to be confrontational, but I definitely got to set her straight. Fast forward another 7 years, and I am running an internet advertising business. Her son applies for the job. He was underqualified, but during the interview, we started talking about his mom, not in a bad way. Turns out she is way harder on him than she ever was to me, constantly berating him because he wasn't very studious and dropped out of university. I gave him the job, and he is now our best employee. I see Mrs. Allison from time to time, never spoken about how she made my life heck my last year of high school, but I now have the satisfaction of defiance. Yeah, there are so many people who take out their frustrations towards their bullies against the next generation. Thanks for being someone who saves the kid instead of using them as weapons against their parents or punishing them for their parents' mistakes. Story 10. I ran into a high school classmate a while back. I've posted this before, but it bears repeating. A guy in high school just didn't like me, and I him. We got into a big dang fight. He broke my nose, and I knocked a couple of his teeth out off campus. No police were involved, but about 10 years later, I saw him sleeping on the street near where I worked. I woke him up and asked him what was going on. He told me about his life after high school. He knocked up his girlfriend. Her parents made them get married. Divorce a year later. He got into doing and ended up alienating everyone. I asked him if he was still using, and he said no, he couldn't buy a dose anyway. I felt bad for him, so I asked if he'd like to stay in my guest house, a one-room cottage set up like an efficiency apartment, for a while. He took me up on it and got a night's sleep in an actual bed for the first time in years. His words. I bought him some clothes and fed him for about a month until I found him a job with a contractor I was doing some work for. Long story short, it's been 6 years, he now owns a contracting business, has a wife and a new baby boy, and just bought the house down the street from me. Good for you, man. Being the bigger person is much better than stewing in bitter, immature revenge. Story 11. Well, I never had a high school bully, but my elementary school bully and I are still neighbors. Apparently, she stole money from her boyfriend, and he came banging at her door and kicking it to get it back. I think her son is 3 or 4, and we are 19. She got a lower back tattoo when she was 12. My father knew she bullied me, but her parents don't, so her mother is always telling me how nice I am and how she wishes her daughter and I were friends so I could lead by example. Story 12. He was my bully in 9th grade. Then I moved schools. From what I heard, he spent most of high school dating emotionally unstable girls, and then having messy breakups, all while pining after this one girl who would never give him the time of day. Also, I found out way later from my SO, who knew him well growing up, that he pretty much spent most of his life living in the shadow of his older brother, who was apparently a huge athletic prodigy or something. He ended up going to Drexel for college, I think. Story 13. Saw him for the first time last month since like 10 years ago. It was in a club, and he remembered my fave since we always used to fight back then. He bought me a drink, and we had a conversation about the old days. He's a dang gentleman now. Story 14. Her and her brother had a very crappy home life. Their mother left them when they were babies, and their dad was an alcoholic who only dropped by to see them a couple of times a year. They stayed with their grandparents, but from my understanding, they didn't have a good relationship either, sadly. I was friends with her and her brother for a few years at secondary school, though we grew apart later on. But while others were scared shitless by her, because of our early friendship, she never picked on me and would sometimes listen to me as a voice of reason. She left school at 16, got into a lot of trouble with the law, and I heard that she ended up doing some time in jail. When she came out, she turned her life around, went back to school to get the qualifications she needed, then went to nursing college. Last I heard, she was a mental health nurse. Story 15. The worst one graduated from college and has gone on to become extremely successful in investment banking. He was working for one of the largest investment firms at first, now has his own company. I am not in touch with him, but come from a very small town, and people like to talk about the small town boy that made it big. He was frickin' ruthless as a bully and downright mean. He thinks he is God's gift to women when he is completely gross. I am convinced he is a sociopath and has managed to get this successful by doing illegal things. I Google him and the company name every so often to see if he has been arrested. Reply 1. I have many friends who are in investment banking. They all hate their jobs and their lives. It's a dreadful career, if that makes you feel better. He's getting money, but he's working from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, likely hates his clients, and will end up gaining weight. It's the life of investment bankers, if that makes you feel any better. Story 16. There was a girl who was very kind to me when I started attending a new school, but she immediately began a targeted bullying campaign against me when I beat her at a spelling bee. It sounds like a ridiculous reason, but apparently her academic standing was very important to her, and I made her feel really threatened. She and her mother, who was a teacher at the school, bullied me until my parents decided that I should just switch to another school. However, she didn't end up doing anything interesting, even though a reputation for intelligence was so important to her. She just went to one of those mediocre Christian universities, married a dude at 20, began popping out children immediately, gained a bunch of weight, and now looks exactly like her horrible mother. I'll admit that I'm not as nice of a person as I could be, and I do get some amusement about her looking 15 years older than me and doing nothing with those good grades she cared so much about. I guess she never cared about the grades. She probably only cared to be better than everyone else. And look where that got her. Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.